Hello, my name is Jen, and I am making my very first YouTube video right now. I hope I don't botch it too poorly. Please be kind. I love constructive criticism, but don't be mean. I've never done this before, and I'm learning as I go. But what I am going to be doing is creating a video where I do my makeup while I talk about some books I've recently read that I thought were really good, and I just want to share with everybody. I was inspired by the great Bailey Sarian and the hilarious Jamie French. If you're unfamiliar with these two YouTubers, they have a similar shtick. Bailey Sarian and Jamie French are both very talented makeup artists. I'm not sure if they both do it professionally. I know Jamie French has done makeup professionally, but I'm not sure if Bailey has or if she's just talented and skilled. But either way, they both make YouTube videos where they do their makeup, and while they do their makeup, they tell a story. In Bailey Sarian's channel, she talks about murder mysteries, true crime, things of that nature, while Jamie French takes a little bit more of a comical approach and will talk about hilarious bad movies. And in both cases, they kind of summarize and give the key details, add in some of their own comments and thoughts on the matter. So I thought, I love their stuff and I also love makeup, so why not give it a try, right? So here we are. I'm making my first video. I'm going to do my makeup while I tell you about a book that I like. And today I'm going to be talking about a book called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. And it was published in 2018. He's from London. And yeah, it was a fantastic book. And let's go ahead and get started. And I'll tell you all about it while I do my makeup. All right. So this book is about a man who wakes up, very first page, he wakes up in the middle of the forest and he doesn't know where he is. He does not even know who he is. He is very confused. He is very scared. He does not know what's going on. He hears a woman screaming nearby, seemingly asking for help. She sounds like she's in danger. So he thinks, I don't know what's going on, but I need to go help this person. So he goes after where he hears the voice. And he believes he does not get there in time because he never finds her. And it sounds like when the sound stops, he's assuming, oh my gosh, she's dead. I didn't save her in time. So now he's devastated because he didn't save this girl. So he wanders through the forest and he makes his way up to this huge but old, creepy looking house. He goes into the house and, or no, I'm sorry, he doesn't go into the house immediately. He knocks on the door and somebody opens the door and just weird things happen. He doesn't know where he is, who he is. He's trying to get people to help him, that there's this girl in the forest. She seems to have been hurt. I don't know who she is. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then they figure out his name. He actually is staying at the house. These people in the house know him and they're like, oh goodness gracious, come in, let's help you. You're cold, you're dirty, you're bleeding, all this weird stuff. And so he gets invited into the house and you slowly, over many pages, realize, or he comes to realize, and the reader does, of course, with him at the same time, comes to realize that there's this huge gathering going on and all these people were brought in to this house. It's the 20th anniversary of the death of this little boy whose family used to live in this house. So this little boy was murdered at the lake on the property, and it basically devastated the family. So the husband and the wife kind of like lose their mind over the death. They blame the older sister because she was supposed to be watching him and she wasn't. So they think, oh my gosh, it's your fault. So they send her away to like boarding school in France or something. I don't remember, out of the country. Like she's gone and she was only like 9 or 10 or something at this point. So, okay. So the narrator, whose name we still don't know, we know he's doctor, but he's like, I don't know who this doctor is. I don't remember anything. I don't know what's going on. So you come to find out this history and all these people are here to, I don't know, celebrate the death anniversary. It's very strange, like why this is happening. So he's trying to figure out what's going on. He's asking questions. Everybody thinks he's like losing his mind or he's exhausted. He was out too late. He didn't get enough sleep. He's hurt. Maybe he has a head injury, blah, blah, blah. So they basically ignore him and tell him, like, go take a nap. We'll be fine. Well, as it turns out, he's in this weird thing where when he falls asleep, he wakes up in a new person, like a new body. And so he has to kind of like start the day all over again. And you come to find out that for lack of a better word, it's a simulation. It's not quite the right word, but as I explained, it hopefully will make sense. So he figures out that every time he falls asleep, or if the person he is existing as dies, he wakes up in somebody new. And then this man in a creepy costume, what's it called? The plague doctor. The plague doctor costume. So this guy shows up in a plague doctor costume and tells him, listen, you don't remember, but you've been here a while, and you have a week, or 8 days, technically, 8 days to solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. You will relive the same day. She's going to die at, I forget, like 11:40 tonight, right before midnight. And if you can solve her murder by the end of the day, but he gets like 8 repetitions of the day, then you will be released from this simulation, for lack of a better word. So he's like, oh my gosh, okay, so I knew somebody died. So he thinks that the girl that he heard in the forest is Evelyn Hardcastle, and he has to figure out who killed her. And he's like, wait, I already got a leg up because like I heard it, I know, blah, blah, blah. So each day he experiences a new person. So he starts out as this doctor who's kind of looked down on, like, that crazy doctor. He never knows what he's talking about. But he is not obviously only going to ever be the doctor. So he also wakes up as, ironically, the man who opened the door for him. He also wakes up as this, like, jerky, douchey guy who, he's just an a-hole, okay? So he wakes up as that guy. He wakes up as this rich woman's son who's like super entitled. And then he also wakes up as this very overweight lawyer. But what's interesting is every time he wakes up in one of these different bodies, he is simultaneously in all the other bodies because he's experiencing the same day as all these people over and over again, but it's like all at the same time. So so he has to like kind of avoid himself, but also work with himself. And so over the course of this book, he slowly gets clues and hints and information. So he, like, at one point, he writes, as when he's the lawyer, the overweight lawyer who really can't move around a lot, because he's excessively overweight. He can't really move around a lot. So he leaves a note for himself and with information for him to find later, because he kind of knows like where he's going to be when, because he's experiencing this day over and over again. So he figures out bits and pieces of information about, like, when he slowly finds out about the death of the kid and the sister being blamed and sent away. And then he leaves like clues and information for himself in various places. And then also he finds out that there's this woman, and he doesn't know her name because she won't tell him her name, but she is also trying to solve this crime. And it's almost like, not so much a competition, but she's like helping him sort of, but also there's a vibe of competition going on. And so he's confused, doesn't know if he can trust her, but she's helping him, and he's kind of like stuck in this weird limbo and doesn't know, he can't figure it out. So he starts working with this woman, and like, for example, she is experiencing it just one day. She's not jumping from like person to person like he is. So she is kind of like, she meets him as all of these 8 different people over the course of the day. So it's very complicated and very confusing. I actually had to take notes and keep track of like who was who and what day was what, because it also doesn't all happen in order. So like at the one time when he's the rich lady's entitled son, he's like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm getting out of here. I know I have a horse and carriage. I'm going to go to the horse and carriage and I'm going to get out of here. So he does that. But of course, when he gets to the carriage house, there's a note left by the woman saying like, don't leave. I need you to go to the guest house at 1:00. I will be there to meet you. I have some important information for you. You need to be there. Please don't leave. Well, of course he leaves anyway, because he's like, screw this, I'm out. So he leaves on the horse and carriage, but he's like, forever, because there's like this magic thing that he can't leave. So he's just on this road forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and he never actually leaves. And he ends up wasting the entire day because he's leaving for the entire day. So like what the day that he's that guy is wasted, where he could have been at the house investigating, he doesn't. But whatever. So he's doing that. And so he eventually, that guy ends up wasting his whole day. But then at the end of that day, he like passes out, and then when he wakes up, it's a new morning. It's the same day repeated, but it's a new morning from his perspective, and he's a new person. So he's like, oh my gosh, I have to do this again. So now he's a new person, and he has to deal with like how everybody, all of the other guests perceive him. Like when he's the jerky guy, everybody's like, nobody will talk to him, and everybody's rude to him, and he's asking for help, but nobody will help him. Nobody will give him any information. When he's the doctor, everybody's like, oh, poor doctor. When he's the lawyer, he gets a lot of respect, and everybody's like willing to talk to him and nice to him. And he has this assistant guy because he's so overweight. Plus, he's a wealthy lawyer. So he has this assistant guy, but again, he's overweight and he can't really move around. He's not bound to a wheelchair necessarily, but he can only walk for a short stint at a time. And so, pardon me. He uses this assistant to kind of get more information, pass notes around, etc. So when he's the lawyer, he actually gains a lot of traction with the investigation. Like he starts to figure out some things, and the assistant gives him materials. Like he'll say, well, I need you to go talk to this person and ask these questions. And so his assistant does, and then comes back with useful information. And then he kind of like gets books and information and tells like, hey, I need you to go here. Like I overheard somebody say that there was something important at the well. So go to the well. I think there's going to be something there. Plus, he also uses his experiences as the other people. For example, while he's the doctor, he meets Evelyn Hardcastle. So the woman he heard screaming in the forest, like he thought was Evelyn Hardcastle, isn't. So Evelyn Hardcastle is alive. So he meets her, and they actually go to the well, and she puts a note in between 2 stones in the well. So when he's the lawyer, he tells his assistant like, hey, I need you to go to the well at like 11:30 a.m. And because he can't say like I was there with Evelyn at like 9:00. He can't say that, but he was. So he's like, I need you to go at this time, and I need you to tell me what's in this note. And then the note, like the assistant does it, and the note gives him more clues. So he actually gains a lot of traction with the investigation as the lawyer, even though he's kind of unable to move around. Okay, so he is slowly making progress and figuring things out. In the meantime, at no point during the day have they met Evelyn's mother or father. They're missing. The father is allegedly on a hunting trip. He's out in the forest. He woke up really early to go hunting in the woods, blah, blah, blah. So he does that. He's also trying to figure out, oh my gosh, where are the parents? Why are they having this weird thing where they brought everybody back to like 20 years later to celebrate the death of their son? What's going on? So he's trying to figure all this stuff out and solve the murder. But he's like, I don't really care about the murder anymore. I don't care if it means that I will be able to escape this place. I need to figure out what's what's happening. Like, who are these people? Why are they here? Everything is suspicious. So he starts to investigate the death of the little boy from 20 years ago, which is not what he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be solving the murder and stopping the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. But he doesn't listen. It turns out okay, though. So he is investigating all these things, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. At one point, he figures out that Evelyn had a best friend back then, before she was sent away after the death of her brother, had like this best friend who, the best friend is at this party, this weekend party, and the best friend's parents are at this party. Or yeah, parents are at the party. And he figures out like there's something important about that. So he looks into it more and more, asking questions, trying to figure it out, still can't find Evelyn Hardcastle's mother or father. And he realizes that there was a secret affair going on between Evelyn's mother and he was like the gardener or something like that, like one of the help. And as it turns out, this guy was was one of the suspects for the little boy's death. So yes, they blamed the sister because he was murdered. He was drowned in the lake, but they realized it was actually like somebody hurt him and then he like passed out in the lake or whatever. But they blamed her because she was supposed to be watching him, and she wasn't. She was off with her best friend when she was supposed to be watching her brother. So anyway, so the guy that was blamed for the murder, the one who actually like committed the murder, disappeared. He ran off because he was the main accused person. So he ran away, and they were like, fine, whatever, the murderer is missing. We're just gonna move on with our lives. Yeah, they really moved on. So as the story goes on, this main character, whose name you don't know until like the very, 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 very end. So he slowly but surely figures out that Mrs. Hardcastle, the mother, was having an affair with like the gardener dude who was accused of killing the boy. And she had another son that turns out was the gardener's baby, not her husband's baby. So there's like all this drama, all this scandal in the family because like, did the gardener kill the boy? Like, was he jealous of his lover's other son to her husband or what? We don't know what's going on, but all these pieces of information are coming out, like the affair and the son and da-da-da-da-da. So you figure out as you're reading that Mrs. Hardcastle, who's still MIA, by the way, Mrs. Hardcastle has a lot more to do with this situation than at first meets the eye. Also, where the heck is Mr. Hardcastle? He's supposed to be hunting. He should have been back a long time ago. Where is he? Eventually, they find him. He has been hiding out in the guest cabin. So remember when the helper girl told the one guy, like, hey, you need to meet me at the guest house. I have information for you. She was going to tell him, Mr. Hardcastle is here. You need to talk to him. He has some information. So finally, he figures out Mr. Hardcastle is at the guest house and goes and talks to him. And Mr. Hardcastle is the one who basically says, like, I know my wife is having an affair. I know that our one son is actually from an affair. Whatever, I'm over it. I just want to see my family kind of try to heal and get over this. And then he also informs the reader and the narrator that the fat man, that the fat lawyer that he was temporarily, was promised to marry the Evelyn Hardcastle as a way of like making things right. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, he has money. We're kind of broke. We can make an alliance and Evelyn Hardcastle is going to marry him. Evelyn Hardcastle doesn't want to marry him. And that was part of what was in the note. The note that she left in the well, that she was trying to like, not escape, but like figure out what to do. She was like sending a note to somebody saying like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. What am I supposed to do? So, that comes out when he finally goes to the guest house and talks to the father. So Um, Shortly thereafter, he leaves the father in the guest house and kind of like goes more investigating, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a ball taking place tonight. So he has to go, and Evelyn Hardcastle's like, hey, will you help me? I have some stuff I could use some help in the ball. At this point, he's somebody else, somebody that she's not super friends with, but he's a useful help. So he goes and he helps her at the ball. But while there, she disappears, and who he is at this point, he's like, oh my gosh, where'd she go? Like, it's like, whatever time it is, she's gonna die soon. Like, I need to find her. I need to keep an eye on her. I don't want her to get hurt. I don't want her to die, blah, blah, blah. So he starts to like wander through the house to try to find her, and he finds her brother, the actual the brother that didn't die, obviously. So he finds him, and the brother is like, oh my gosh, I need to tell you something. I think Evelyn poisoned herself. I can't find her, something. She like drank something and went away. And so he starts trying to figure out where is Evelyn. And then he goes outside and he sees Evelyn standing in front of like this little like pool, basically like a swimming pool. And then he sees another man standing off to the side, shoots her. And she gets shot, and then she like falls back into the pool, and he's like, oh my gosh, she's dead. But it's like 11:30 p.m. and he's like, oh my gosh, she's dead. I didn't save her, blah, blah, blah. Well, as it turns out, spoiler alert. So if you don't want to know how the story ends, like, I don't know, fast forward, stop the video now, I don't know, or just get a spoiler. As it turns out, she's not dead. She faked her death. So surprise, surprise, she faked her death because she doesn't want to marry that overweight lawyer guy. So she's faking her death to get out of that. And the person who shot the gun didn't actually shoot the gun, like it was blanks or whatever. And she like made something look like she was bleeding, and then she fell into the pool. And then the doctor was in on it. So when the doctor was like, oh, pull her out of the pool, she's dead, he was in on it. But as it turns out, another twist comes along. So we find out that like she's dead, but she's not really dead. But the guy that pulled the trigger is actually one of the characters that the narrator wakes up as. But he hasn't woken up as him yet. So he wakes up as this guy a little bit further in the story and realizes that he's in on it too. But he didn't know he was in on it until like halfway through the day when Evelyn confessed to him, like, listen, I don't want this to happen. I don't want to marry. I want to be able to fake my death so I can get out of this. So she's like, I need you to stand right here and just pull the trigger. Just pull it up into the air so that I don't actually get shot. And just please do this for me, please. So he does, because he knows what's going to happen because he was there before. He does that, and, you know, the day ends again. So then he realizes, well, wait a minute. Evelyn Hardcastle didn't actually die. She faked her death. So, like, how I solved the murder. She didn't actually die. She killed herself, but not. And in the meantime, I almost forgot. In the meantime, this is important. In the meantime, Evelyn Hardcastle had this assistant person who, like, you know, was like a lady in waiting and would like help her get dressed and all of that, et cetera, et cetera. And she was at some point somewhere doing something, and she accidentally gets poisoned. And when she gets poisoned, she and the brother were like drinking the same thing, and they both die. But they have an anecdote. Somehow they have an anecdote. So, and they're like, oh my gosh, we only have one. Who do we save? Do we save this person? Do we save that person? And of course they save the brother because he's the wealthy one. And the other girl's just like the lady in waiting. She's like a servant. So they don't save her. So the brother ends up coming back to life. And that's when we find out Evelyn Hardcastle is not Evelyn Hardcastle. So the person who faked her death wasn't actually Evelyn Hardcastle. And if you recall, when Evelyn was like 8 or 9 years old and blamed for the death of her brother, they sent her away to France, and now it's 20 years later, so she's like in her late 20s. Nobody has seen her in 20 years. So her assistant, or her lady in waiting, whatever you want to call her, and her switched places. So the girl that died of poisoning was actually Evelyn Hardcastle, and the girl who faked her death in the pool with the fake shot was the assistant. So when the narrator was like, oh, I figured it out, she didn't actually kill herself, mystery solved, he was wrong, because Evelyn Hardcastle did die by poisoning. So who poisoned her and why? Well, that's now the new thing that he has to figure out. Who poisoned her and why? Because when he goes to the guy with the plague mask on, he's like, I figured it out. She didn't really die. Da 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 da. It was all faked her death to avoid marrying this man, etc. He's like, wrong. That's not actually what happened. So he's like, crap, I didn't figure it out. So he has to go back and figure it out. And then that's when he realizes that Evelyn and her assistant traded places, and Evelyn was the assistant who died of poisoning. So who the heck poisoned her? Well, that's a really good question. And to be perfectly honest, I don't even remember who poisoned her. For some reason, I think it was an accident. And she drank from the poison that somebody else was supposed to drink from, and that's what killed her. But she did, in fact, die. Like, they didn't save her, and she died. So at the end of the book, the narrator finally finds out everything that's going on in this whole world. Like, what is happening? Who is here? Why am I doing this? Why am I reliving my life? Why is this other woman in here, like, assisting me? What is going on? So the big twist, and the thing that makes me kind of even more enjoy this book, in addition to, like, the complicated of the story, I love a good complicated story, and I love a good complicated story. I love when there's a lot of interesting things going on and you have to keep track of, and twists after twist after twist. You come to find out that he is in, like, this futuristic alternate universe kind of place where he's actually in prison. But here's the thing, like, he didn't do anything wrong. Throughout the whole story, there were also these little, like, flashbacks where he had, like, these weird memory snippets of a wife and a daughter that he's trying to save, but he can't save, but he doesn't, like, really remember it. It's, like, very confusing, but it's just, like, this tiny little snippet of a memory. So as it turns out, the girl who's been helping him the whole time murdered his wife and daughter, like, in reality, years and years and years and years and years ago. And in this futuristic world, murderers go into this, like, time loop as punishment. And she remembers, but he doesn't. And why is he there? Good question. Because I had the same question I was reading. Like, why, if his wife and child were murdered and the woman is the murderer, then why are they in there trying to solve this weird alternate universe murder mystery? Well, okay, so she was punished by being sent into this place as punishment. And she relives this day over and over again where she has to solve Evelyn's murder, and she can't. Like, that's kind of thing. Like, she'll never figure it out because you don't know who Evelyn is, and we don't know who poisoned her, because et cetera, et cetera. I think if you read the book, you actually do figure out who poisoned her, but it's been a couple of months since I read it. I apologize, I don't remember. There you go. Now if you read it, now you have something to find out. Who actually poisoned her? I don't remember. So anyway, so the actual woman murderer lady was in there as punishment, and the man whose wife and daughter died is like, that's not good enough. Like, I want this woman to be tortured even more. I want her to be tortured. And he's like, put me in there. I want to be in there with her to, like, help torture her or whatever. Because he has, like, I have nothing to live for anymore, blah, blah, blah. So the guy in the plague doctor costume. He's like, he's like the warden. He's like, I don't know, this is very unconventional, 100 years ago or whatever this happened. This is very unconventional, but we're going to let it happen. It's almost like a social experiment. So they let him go into this weird time loop with the woman who murdered his family. But he's like, here's the catch. When you go in there, you're not going to remember anything. You're not going to remember who you are. You're not going to remember why you're there. You're just going to need to solve this murder and whatever. So he has been in there for years and years and years, replaying the same 8 days over and over and over because he hasn't been able to solve the murder. And they've been like investigating and like experimenting on him, changing things. Like, okay, this day he's going to wake up as this person and he's going to do it in this. And then this day he's going to wake up as this person and see if he can figure it out this way. And now in this time, we're going to give him a clue or a hint or something that will maybe help him figure it out. So like for years, decades, he has been trying to solve this murder and the woman, and he has no recollection of who he is or why he's there. Oh, geez, too much. But over this time, he actually figured out the murder. Well, they counted it because it's not really her. That's not Evelyn Hardcastle. So like he is considered to have solved the murder, but only one person can leave. Like they both can't leave, even though technically they worked together to solve this murder. They're like, only one person can leave. And he's like, at this point, he has grown and come to terms with it or whatever, that he's like, no, I have forgiven her. I have moved past this. And he's like, I want us both to be able to get out. I want us both, like, we did this together. We deserve to both be released. So, and I'm pretty sure they both do end up leaving, and they just go back to their life. Or perhaps she's like, I don't know what to do with my life. I don't want to leave me here, please. But regardless, he finally gets out and like goes back to his life, almost like it's shipped back in time when he was originally plucked out of time and put into this like alternate universe prison thing. But it was just this weird twist at the end. Like, I was not expecting this to be like an alternate universe punishment for murders. And then this warden guy is like manipulating it and testing things and almost like messing with him. I don't know. It was just wild to me. So that basically was how it ended. And you don't know what happens after that. Like, does he go back to his life? Is everything happy and good and lovely? Or what? You don't know. Like, that's just how it ends. Isn't that wild? I don't know. I thought it was pretty wild. Honestly, I would give this book a 9.5 out of 10. And the only reason I'm not giving it a full 10 out of 10 is because there were times that I got confused. And I ended up reading it a second time. And the reason I read it a second time was during COVID quarantine summer, my local library did it as a virtual book talk. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to talk to somebody about this book. I don't know anybody else who read this book. So I did that. I read the book and reread the book. And then I went to that book talk or whatever and had a blast talking about it. But the second time I read it, this is where I was going. The second time I read it, I actually took notes and kept track of who is who, what day it was, who he was on each day, when characters would die, I would mark them off. I would keep track of like the clues and the evidence that he came across and how he came across it and who helped him find it. Like when he was the overweight lawyer and his assistant helped him, like I kept track of that. Because for a while I thought his the lawyer's assistant was the murderer. I thought he was the murderer for a little while. It wasn't. But he was involved somehow. He was involved somehow, but I don't remember how. He had something, he wasn't involved in the murder necessarily, but he knew something. Like he knew that Evelyn wasn't who she said she was or something. He knew something. He had something to do with it. So I like took notes and kept track of everything because it was so complicated and just so interesting and fun, and I just loved it. Oh, I don't have my lipstick that I want. Oh, well, I guess I'll just use this red lipstick, even though it doesn't match my lip liner. Oh, well, what are you going to do, right? So, is this going to be awful? Yeah, probably. Yeah, kind of. It's all right. Whatever. So, 9.5 out of 10, only because I got confused and I literally had to take notes to keep track of who was who and what was what. But the second time I read it, it was super cool because I knew that who Evelyn was and wasn't, and I knew that the death when she fell into the pool was faked and why. And so like I knew like when there were awkward interactions between the lawyer and Evelyn, I knew why. And I knew like when they couldn't find the dad and like all of the messages between him and the woman, the murderer woman, like I knew why they were important and what they were pointing to. And I just thought it was really cool. I absolutely loved it. I have never read a book like it before. It was a murder mystery. It was sci-fi. It was complicated. It had all these interesting characters, and there was so much crisscrossing and the subplots that intertwined, and it all came together so nicely in the end, and like that twist about like this futuristic prison thing. So cool, so amazing. I absolutely loved it. I want everybody to read it. I actually recommended it to so many people, and unfortunately it did not go very well with many people. Actually, some of the people I recommended it to didn't even finish it. They abandoned it because it got confusing and complicated and they didn't like it, which makes me sad. I should probably like email the author or something and be like, oh my gosh, I love your book. I just bought another book. I just went to Barnes & Noble and there was another book by him and I bought it and I'm really excited to read it. I don't know if it's going to be anything like this one, but I don't care. I loved his first book so much. I'm going to patronize his other writing. So there we go. All right. That's my look today. Hey. And I am done telling you about my book, and I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you will go out and buy this book. Sorry, it's backwards. I hope you'll go out and buy this book. Isn't this a beautiful cover? This is what drew me to the cover, made me want to buy it. But yeah, so I hope you go out and buy the book, and I hope you like what I did here. Maybe watched me and want to copy my look. Feel free. Yeah, so I hope I did an okay job. No, like I said, I've never done this before, so we'll see how it goes. If you have any constructive feedback or comments or suggestions on how I could do better, please add it to the comments below. I hope to make more of these because this was fun. I like talking about books. It's better when somebody responds, but I'm a teacher. I'm really good at just talking. So thanks. I hope you have a good day and stay beautiful inside and out. Bye.